welcome to the Standout Coffee Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So happy to have you here. And please, could you tell me and our viewers, listeners, like who you are and where you're from, a little bit of that?
Sure. So my name is Mitra Roshanian, and I was born and raised in Romania. I grew up there, and I got into coffee very fast. I was 12, so that was, let's say, 13 years ago, something like that. And I started washing dishes in a bar in my parents' coffee shop. So they were working with coffee, and I needed money in the summer, so I started working with them. And I fell in love with it immediately. I remember washing dishes one night, and it was so full around me. Everyone was, like, the barmans were barmans back then, they weren't baristas. They were running around, everyone was yelling. It was so chaotic in a way, but I loved it because everyone was sitting at the tables with their families and enjoying their time because of what we were doing. We were bringing people together. We were building a community, and that immediately resonated with me. I was like, okay, this is it. This is me. So I just stuck to it, explored a bit of everything from being a barista to marketing for coffee shops.
And did you continue working like summers and holidays in your family coffee bar?
I did that until 2015. Mm-hmm. In 2015, I moved to Czech Republic to study there. So then that was a period where I stopped working because I was still going to school. And I was there for a long time. And then I dropped out. Of school. I was like, nope, I don't have patience for this. Mm-hmm. And I started working. In a few things. I think the only job I had outside of coffee was I was a cleaner at the boxing gym I was boxing at. Mm-hmm. And that was the only thing non-coffee related. Other than that, I kept doing coffee.
Fantastic. But you did mention that your family has a coffee shop or a coffee bar in Romania. So there's like coffee in the family, coffee history. Tell me a little bit about your family's sort of coffee business.
Well, they started off as a computer company. They were selling computers in Romania after the communism fell. That's how they started. My dad loves tea. My mom loves coffee. And then they opened a spice shop. It was called CTS, Coffee, Tea, and Spice. And they were selling coffee, tea, and spice. And I remember they started with Boca and Traboca. And they were just getting into it. Coffee was never supposed to be the main thing. They just got really into it. They wanted to make sure they serve a good coffee. And then they started looking into it and discovered they can have really nice coffee. So this was before third wave. This was back in 2009, 2008, maybe earlier. And they started looking into it. They opened some coffee shops. Those failed. They failed. Many things failed. And then I think back in 2013, they opened a coffee shop and they took distribution for La Marzocco in Romania. Mm-hmm. So I remember that moment was a tipping moment, and it was everything or nothing. Like it was everything, and it was a very tough period, and it was a big project. So I think that's when they really went all in. They started taking equipment. So they started focusing on that. We moved to Bucharest. And then once we moved to Bucharest, things picked up. They started distributing more equipment. They opened the showroom. They opened the coffee shop. They started importing green coffee. Wow. They started opening roasteries, coffee shops. Everything went crazy from there on.
And so I'm going to stop you there, and we're going to get back to this a little bit more because you were previously telling me about the very interesting and dynamic specialty coffee scene in Bucharest, in Romania. But we're going to skip forward a little bit and but we're here in Sweden because you're not visiting from Romania. You live in Sweden.
I live in
How did
Sweden.
you end up in Sweden?
Well, I was planning a road trip in Norway. And I thought it would be fun to add the west coast of Sweden. I said, let me do Copenhagen all the way up to Norway. So planning out where we want to sleep, I found Falkenberg, which is a gorgeous beach town. And because coffee is very important to me, I wanted to see, okay, where can I have a good coffee if I sleep 1 or 2 nights here? And I found a little bus on the beach with swirl coffee roasters. And when I found them and I saw pictures of the place and what they were doing, I immediately snapped on it. And I just thought, what if? And I texted them on Instagram. And I told them, okay, hi, my name is Mitra. This is what I do. This is what I can do. If I move there, will you hire me? They said yes. And I took my bags and I moved with 2 suitcases in Sweden. I didn't know one person anywhere in this area.
And just to contextualize, so Swirl is one of the newer roasteries here in Sweden. They've attained fantastic success. They source great green coffee and are roasting very crisp, clear, quite light roasted coffee as you were previously describing it.
Yeah.
And are very, very ambitious. So not only did you send them a direct message, but they answered you and basically hired you on the spot.
Yeah. It was. They were having just the bus. This was in, I think I texted them in September or October of 2022. And I moved here in February of 23. And they didn't have the coffee shop. So they had a roastery, which was not as big as it is now. They grew immensely in the last year. And they did the bus. But I needed a job in February, not in summer. And they opened a coffee shop in a design museum in Falkenberg. And they hired me there as the barista. So I worked there for 6 months. We talked about it from the beginning, that it's going to be a seasonal thing. And then, I go off, they continue what they do. So they pulled out of the museum at the end of the summer to focus on the roastery. And that was growing very fast. And I was planning on leaving. I didn't know what to do, either to Gothenburg maybe, or I don't know. I had all options open. And right before I started, I was supposed to start a barista job at Alchemisten. And right before I was supposed to sign with them, the museum that I worked in for Swirl asked me if I would like to take over.
In Falkenberg?
Yes. And I said yes. I said immediately yes. I fell in love with that place right away. And I had 3 weeks to open. And I was alone. I got 2 pallets. I received 2 pallets of stuff, of equipment, of everything. And I started unpacking them. I started putting the stuff together, calling my friends to ask how I do plumbing, how I do the electric, how do I do this and that. I carried fridges up the stairs. I went to auctions. I had no resources. I really didn't have a budget for this. It was just all my savings, all my resources from around me, and very little cash, actual cash. So I think I had 3,000 euros, all of the cash money. So after equipment and everything, I was left with 3,000 euros for everything. Dishwasher, plates, everything. I had nothing. It was empty. I just had the espresso machine and some grinders.
That's amazing.
And out of 3,000 euros, the payment system was 1,000 euros.
Yeah.
So I was left with 2,000 euros. And I said, it's impossible. We cannot make this work. I don't have a dishwasher. I don't have this. I don't have that. How am I going to make this with 2,000 euros? So then I started going to auctions and fighting for my life and seeing what I can get for free, what I can do myself, where can I save up money. And I opened on the 16th of September. With what I had, I got an amazing dishwasher. So that was amazing. And from there, I started doing my thing.
It's so interesting to hear. And I mean, over the years, one hears about, whether they are friends or parts of bigger companies, and they're, opening coffee shops with literally the budget before opening can be, hundreds of thousands of euros in order to design the space, pay a fee for the lease, or they start hiring and they have wages even before they've opened, not to mention the build out and all the equipment and plumbing that needs to be taken place before opening. But then on the other hand, you also have people like yourself, or we have friends here in Stockholm, David, even Oscar, decades ago, opening cafes with basically, like how much money do I have in my back pocket? That's
What
my
can I do
budget.
with it? Yeah.
So interesting, and so like almost different universes when people are opening their cafes. But was that the first time you opened a cafe?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So an incredible experience,
So it was
obviously.
the first time it wasn't the first time I had a business.
Right.
So I was baking in Romania before I moved here for coffee shops.
Mm-hmm.
So baking is also a big part of what I enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I basically had a business baking
Yeah.
for coffee shops, and that was some experience I got there. And I also had a construction company, which was
You're full of surprises. Yeah.
and that was a short-lived thing because I realized I should know things about construction.
Right.
But it was an interesting experience.
Yeah.
So coffee shop, this was the first time. I've seen people around me do it, so I had a bit of know-how, but not, I was in a new country, new laws, everything was different. So it was a bit intimidating, but it was more fun at the beginning. The process of opening I got a rush. So that was exciting.
And so that was September, 10 months ago.
Yeah.
And you were open also during the super dark winter months.
Yes.
And now you're surviving the summer season with more business, I'm sure, than during the winter time. And but I know that you're also considering opening something not only in Falkenberg but in Göteborg, in Gothenburg.
Yeah.
So obviously there's still a desire to like do stuff and create and open more. So this experience that you had did not sort of detract you from wanting to do it again. You want to do it again.
Definitely.
So tell me about like your thoughts. So you're looking for a space.
Yes.
How would you do things differently this time compared to last time?
I would pay any day a crazy rent in a good area, other than to accept something that it's very cheap just because it's cheap, because that can cost you more than an expensive space will.
So location is like super key.
Location is key.
Yeah.
If you don't have the resources to build a community, and I don't have those resources. I don't have backup of a year to let it pick up. You can also do that. There's plenty of people who did this. There's Morgan Coffee Roasters who also have a little coffee shop front, and people do go there, and they're quite known. So it's doable. But when your income doesn't rely just on that, if your income, you need fast cash flow, you need foot traffic, and you don't have time to create that, so because it is coffee after all. It's not a bar, it's not a restaurant, so it's very niche. And I think location is, for me, positioning of location is my main priority right now. So out of my whole budget, I am willing to put as much as needed in location and risking it in a very big location, other than big as in rent, other than to just accept something that is cheaper, but it's also in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, of course, of course. So, so you have location is like super high up on the list. Obviously, with the museum, it was what it was. You know, there was a museum reaching out to you. Do you want to open a cafe in our existing space, which is usually also very relevant. So after location. What do you say about like, so for example, I remember many coffee shops, they are talking about like, well, do I need a super pretty fancy coffee machine, or can I go with something a little bit cheaper, lesser known brand? Or, I mean, you were mentioning that your family is a La Marzocco dealership. So how important is like, what type of equipment that you would have?
I would say that if you don't have the option to finance, if you do have the option and you know what you're doing, I would go to whoever is distributing in your country and, I don't know, making a payment plan with them, finding a solution. They're usually very open to finding what works, because it's in their interest as well for you to open.
Yeah.
And it's in your interest to get the best equipment out there.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, I think that out of everything, I wouldn't compromise ever on grinders. You can have a very bad espresso machine and a very good grinder and have amazing coffee. The other way around, you can't. You can't have a nice leva or a mod bar and a shit grinder and have good coffee from that grinder. It's impossible.
Yeah.
So I would, out of everything, I would put great focus on getting the best grinder you can in your budget, in your reality. But I wouldn't say it matters so much. I wouldn't get stuck on details like this. Oh, is it a La Marzocco? Is it this? Is it that?
Right.
You can get a second hand.
I mean, so very often people talk about like, you know, I want a Slayer, La Marzocco, Victoria Arduino, whatever, any of these like very well-known brands, Kies van der Westen, for example. And I wanted for two reasons. One is I want it in my window or in my shop front so that people see it and visually they know I take my coffee seriously.
Yeah.
But also, obviously, I want it because it does the job really well. But then, of course, I completely agree with you that grinders are key. Usually, they're a little bit, you know, like maybe on the back, or they're not up front. So they're not like the centerpiece around which you design your bar. But they are really,
I
you
designed
did.
my bar around the Neka. I also have it like tattooed on me. So I love the grinders, and the brew bar for me is my favorite part in my bar. I need it to showcase the grinder, the scales, the coffee, and I wanted people to be able to be in front of me, interact, film. People love that, and they want to feel like it's the right space to do so, because if you're hiding in the back, they won't. They will feel like it's none of their business. So I think people should, but for sure, people usually do the espresso machine as centerpiece. You know, and it makes sense. A lot of them are beautiful. They attract attention, and as you said, people can spot a good coffee shop by how serious they take their equipment. So I think it's about approach. Definitely not a must to start off. Like you can do amazing things with a second hand or something that has been used a lot.
So before we started recording, we were speaking a little bit about the hidden costs of opening a cafe, but also running a coffee shop. Now we've spoken a little bit about like, you know, needing to invest in a dishwasher before opening up, obviously. You were talking about like the importance of location, and obviously a better location will cost more money for you in terms of rent. Very often one of the hidden costs for running any business is the staff, because I'm sure you spend a lot of time working, whether you are making coffee, you know, doing all the other work, as well as baking. But at sooner or later, people need to hire staff. Sometimes they get by with, you know, a minimum amount of staff, but slowly but surely you need more and more staff. So what are your thoughts on like staffing? Do you want to be on bar when you're open, for example, or would you be happy to have other people brew the coffee?
No, I love being in bars. I love being a barista. So I think staff is actually the biggest cost. It's usually bigger than the rent or anything else. And I didn't know that. I didn't realize, like, yes, of course, I know how much you would pay, but if you don't put the numbers down, it will destroy you immediately financially. And I didn't know my numbers. I didn't know the accounting part of my business, and I learned the hard way. So I had a girl work, and she was a part-timer, and I couldn't afford. I just couldn't afford. I realized 1 month in that I cannot afford this. So therefore, I stopped. I calculated again, and then I realized, okay, I can do this for summer season. Off season, I have to deal with it alone. And that's what I did. I did everything from accounting, baking, cleaning, shifts, supplying, shopping, everything that's there was.
It sounds fantastic that you discovered this only 1 month in, so that you could sort of tweak your business model in many ways.
It was very easy because the first month, so we did a cash flow forecast, we did a business plan, so I was expecting some numbers. And I had days on end with no clients. Not even one person was walking in. So my first month, September, I was crying in the kitchen every day.
Yeah.
I was like, what did I do?
Yeah.
What am I gonna, I was earning more working for anyone else. What am I doing?
But let's also, again, sort of describe that. Falkenberg, for those who don't know, is a pretty small place. How many people live in
40,000.
40,000, yes. So it's a really small. It picks up in the summertime. There are more tourists and
yeah, it doesn't.
But so you're talking about maybe in the future opening something in Gothenburg, which is a city much 20 times bigger, all like 800,000 people
800,000
with the surroundings.
Plus surrounding a lot of.
And so let's talk about because in Göteborg now you have obviously the bigger chains, the national chains, coffee chains.
Yeah.
You have Damateo, which has been around for 15, almost 20 years, which has 3 or 4 or 5, maybe even locations.
I think they have 5 locations.
You have A43 in the center of the city. Alchemisten you mentioned previously.
Yeah, they're on the other side of the water. And then we have the roasteries who have some have a front of a car. We have Gringo, we have Morgan. Who else does?
There's Pan Nordby, Café Räven.
Yeah.
But do the roasters also, can you go there for a fika, bulle and a coffee?
Only at Gringo and Morgan.
Oh, okay.
And it's definitely focused on the roastery. It's just more of their front. They have the space in it, so they opened it to people. But I think it's just those two roasteries.
And so, but you obviously think there's room for more coffee locations in Göteborg. Now back to Romania and Bucharest. You were telling me how in Bucharest, a city of 4 million, you have 100 really good and ambitious specialty coffee cafes or locations.
Yeah, we have easily, I think even more. There's definitely most coffee shops, even not convenient commercial places, will still sell very good coffee because roasters are doing a very good job on that side, I think, on promoting the concept, and because it's everywhere. As I said, you can go in a jewelry store and they will have a mod bar and some crazy geisha just because they can. So right now, I would say from 2015, things exploded in Eastern Europe, not just Romania. Because Romania, not only in Bucharest, but even smaller cities are filled with amazing locations where you can have amazing coffees. Also in roasteries, I think it's going very good. We have the world champion, the world vice champion. So some things are also moving there. It's just that I think it's a bit more isolated in a way from the rest of the world.
Yeah, but you also lived in the Czech Republic, and I know that in the Czech Republic there's a lot of great coffee in cities that aren't even that large.
Big, yeah.
You were mentioning Poland, that there's amazing coffee everywhere in Warsaw, for example.
Yeah.
So back to Göteborg, Gothenburg. So you think that there is room for more really ambitious coffee places in Gothenburg?
Sweden is known worldwide for amazing roasteries, and I would love to see that also in the actual coffee shop scene, because coffee shops bring a lot of value to the neighborhood they're in. You dump a coffee shop somewhere and that gathers people, neighbors start knowing each other. You can do events, you can have artists coming, you can bring people together. And that brings a lot of value to the communities we live in. And I believe that the more, it's also so open, everyone drinks coffee or tea. You know, it's not like alcohol, whether, maybe religion or health, or everyone comes to a coffee shop, from kids to elderly people, and that's very beautiful. I think it's a must for more coffee shops to open. And I was telling you, I think that's the best description of healthy competition. And the way I see it is you're not even creating, it's a blue ocean, it's infinite. You can approach it in so many ways because there's so much need for that. And we don't have that. We have the chains, the big chains, and those, I wouldn't say build community. Those are not that kind of coffee shop. If we look at Amate, we look at A43, clients get attached to their barista. Baristas know their name. It becomes, of course, people come and go all the time, but it still is a sense of familiarity, which makes people feel good about the place they're in. So you want to go back not because I need my coffee in the morning and I'm in a rush. That's also nice, and we have to also offer that, but it doesn't stop there. And I think that's the main difference between commercial and specialty when it comes not to quality of products, but approach of business plan and model. At least that's how I see it, and that's what I see in the clientele we have in coffee shops. So right now, I think that, and I hope many more people will come and open things in Stockholm, in Malmö, in Göteborg, and smaller cities. Because that's how it grows. People start seeing coffee shops pop up everywhere, and they will go more to them. It will be more normal. It won't be just a luxury or, this is so different, because it is different, and we want to make sure people know we're doing things differently, but not to intimidate them in a way where they don't feel like they can approach. So I think that it will definitely get there, but we need people who have the patience for it and who are willing to push through it, because it won't be easy. It won't be easy.
I like also the way you do have many different types of sort of approaches from the multitude of places serving. So here in Sweden, I mean, when you talk about, for example, Gothenburg, Damatio is obviously serving the coffee that they roast themselves. Alchemisten are serving the coffee that Ritu that they own, that they serve them, that they roast themselves. A43 is working with a couple of different roasteries, sort of picking and choosing what they like the best from the current offerings, which as a coffee enthusiast, I like going to a place like that. Here in Stockholm, when I always get the question like, I'm coming to Stockholm, where should I go for coffee? You have a couple of very nice places, but basically are like showrooms for their roastery. So Drop Coffee is a Stockholm coffee institution. They serve the coffee that they roast. Johan and Nyström. Pascal's 3 locations here are serving the coffee that they roast themselves. They recently started roasting a few years ago. Then obviously you have a couple of places that are serving other people's coffees. You have AB Café, Stora Bageriet, Gast, but also Svedjan, on Södermalm. They're serving coffee roasted by Copy. So sort of there are different approaches. In terms of your coming, sort of coffee ventures, are you going to start roasting and serving the coffee that you are roasting, or are you more of a multi-roaster that you would pick and choose from different roasteries?
I don't think I will ever go into roasting. It's the only area of the industry that I didn't approach, and that doesn't attract me, to be honest. I really like working with green coffee. And I would really like to push on that as well, and to learn more, to get closer to that. So the only roasting I would do would be strictly sample roasting and knowing the basics of it, but not for my coffee shop. Maybe with a partner down the line, if someone wants to and they have a great idea and I want to invest or want to partner up, then that's great. I think I would do that, but me, I would not go and be like, yes, I want a roaster and some coffee, let me start. And I think there's plenty of people who do it amazingly, are super passionate about it, and I wanna fuel that. I wanna support them, and they will support me by giving me their coffee, I guess. And that's how I see it. So I see it very much. I'm a coffee shop. I'm a barista. I'm a coffee shop, and I like partnering up with roasters and letting them do their thing, and I do my thing, and we see the middle ground.
Yeah, we had a guest here at the roastery a few weeks ago, Ryan, who previously was the head of coffee for Watch House in London. London has 25 locations, or Watch House has in London. They also have a number of locations in New York City. And they were always rotating coffees. They roast their own coffees, but they were rotating coffee, and they were using some really, really high-end coffee. And I asked Ryan, why are you, using some of the most expensive green coffee in the world? And he was saying primarily, or one of the reasons was to retain staff, because if you're a coffee bar, you could have 1 location or 20 locations. Key is to really be able to retain the ambitious barista. And if the ambitious barista is using the same coffee day in, day out, then the focus is less on coffee and more about hospitality, which is not a bad thing. I mean, obviously, as a barista, you're working in hospitality. But if you got into working with coffee because of your passion for coffee, it was a great tool, I found, that he was describing, to use really, really fantastic coffees on rotation in order to sort of retain the staff. One of the things that I think Aldrin in A43 in Göteborg has done very well is to sort of really work with a number of different roasters and be able to not only stimulate his own sort of passion for great coffee, but also retain some very ambitious baristas through using great coffee.
I agree. I think it's very important. In terms of staff, I see people who have the skills and want more, but the work environment there and don't facilitate their growth. And that's really sad, because there's so much potential there. And I think that's also why most people started off from one place. There weren't that many options. As you said, 15 years ago, who else was doing specialty here? Of course, most people started off from one place. And I think it's still the case in many places, not just here. I would love to facilitate, I always said that when I get to the point of having a bigger team, I definitely want to make it a priority, as long as they make it a priority to want to grow, for me to invest in their growth. Of course they might go. Of course people with ambitions like this always go, because they have so much energy. And if I can be a part of that, of their growth and of facilitating that, that's amazing. And that's the goal. I think also on education and on growth in terms of courses and things like this, I hope to see more and more movement in that direction. It would be great.
Fantastic. So going back to your future coffee bar in Göteborg, or any other place. So where are you now, and where are you? What are the steps ahead?
I have everything ready except location. I need a location. I have some options. I can't say I feel any of them are right. Uh, in theory, on paper, they make sense. They look good, but I just didn't feel that this is it. So I'm still looking. Now everyone is still on holiday because
Yes.
it's the semester holidays, so things are very slow. I think I'll get more clarity in the next month. What my next steps are. I already have equipment necessary. I have the rights. I also have staff if if we're good to open. So it's just a matter of, I think right now I'm a bit scared. I never planned on staying in Sweden. I ended up falling in love with Sweden and making amazing friends. And then I discovered Gothenburg very recently. And it was a friend of mine who lived there. One of my first friends, I would say, that I made in Gothenburg that were very close. And he said it would be so nice if you would open something here. And he said that to me 9 months ago. So 1 month after I opened the coffee shop in Parkenburg. And it just planted the seed. And I started thinking about it. And now I looked into it. I did all the legal side of things. Got another espresso machine. And now I'm just thinking, do I want to take everything I made after all of that struggle and risk reinvesting it and maybe going bankrupt? Or things happen. I've seen it happen many times to people. It's not like you can be the best at numbers, you can be the best. Sometimes things don't work. And it is scary, but at the same time, I know that my main instinct is push on it.
Yeah.
Push everything you have on it. And I am scared, but I will still do it.
That's amazing, Mitra. No, but also it's a great way, sort of like coming back full circle to like the title, hidden costs of opening a coffee company or a cafe or coffee bar or something. We can talk about the machinery or the surprisingly high, cost of staff or so on. But your personal fear or your insecurities or, all of those are super hidden. You don't really know until you face them, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, it's one of the most scary things ever. So super interesting and valid point.
Yeah.
Amazing. So what are you doing for the rest of the summer?
Working. I have a few projects actually I'm working on. I was invited and also I started exploring the idea of pop-ups in very unconventional spaces. And this was also from my desire of how can I get specialty coffee out to people in Sweden? What do Swedish people love? They love going out and drinking. So I kept thinking, how can I get to these people? They obviously also drink coffee, but not, how do you get to them to understand? So I started reaching out a bit to nightclubs, to seeing what they're doing, and I found Yakida, who is a bit of a more interesting nightclub. I don't go in nightclubs, so I also don't know anything about their industry. And I approached them. I told them, it would be pretty cool to do a brew bar at 5 a.m. in your club and do specialty coffee-based cocktails.
Oh my God.
And they said yes.
Yeah.
They said yes. That sounds fun. Nobody has done this. This is so weird. We have to do it. And we're gonna do that on the pretty sure on the 23rd. I don't want to give a date yet, but before the end of summer. And hopefully that's going to be the start of an ongoing thing.
I love it.
And
so 5 a.m. brew bar. And then when you're done with that, you go in straight to the coffee bar and open.
Yes, actually. So that's a good example of approaching things differently. And seeing, okay, where can I also have a tattoo studio who invited me to do a pop-up. They have a tattoo studio in an art gallery in the center of Göteborg, and they have a little space near it. And they said, "Oh, would you like to So now we're exploring that. There's things like this I'm also involving myself in, and I think it's necessary in a way for me and for my approach with building communities around what we have, which is coffee.
That's fantastic, really.
So right now I'm
Sounds like a good summer plan.
yeah, it's a pretty fun
And so but right now, where can people find you in Sweden? It's in Falkenberg.
in Falkenberg, yes.
At the Museum of
Rian Design Museum.
Rian Design Museum.
Yes.
And are you open 7 days a week, or?
I'm open from August only Wednesday to Sunday, 12 to 4. So my opening hours are the exact same opening hours of the museum. I used to do longer hours until I realized it doesn't make sense financially. I was making more money by not being open.
Yeah.
So then I stuck to the simple. It was very hard to explain to people why the museum is closed, why I'm open. So then we just stuck when the museum is open, I'm open. When it's closed, I'm closed.
And is there like an Instagram account for the cafe?
Yes, the cafe has Baraye coffee. So it's called Baraye. And it's also the museum. So we're always hand in hand with organizing, and they post about the coffee shop. So it's quite easy to...
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. This is so fun.